This short video will instruct you on how to use a Jupyter Hub to do your labs for remote sensing. In your browser, enter the following URL. You don't need all of this information, but at least just this right here. Into the URL, making sure that you put in HTTPS. You hit enter. You may get a warning about a security certificate. Just bypass this, and you can look at the certificate if you want to see that it's signed by me. The username and password for this lab has been sent to you via Teams. I'm just going to use, I'm going to use the dummy account and log in here. You would just put in your username and password. It'll take a second for the JupyterLab to load, and then we'll be into the console like this. Now, over on the left in this file view area, you'll see a path at the top, and if you click on the folder, it'll take you to the very top of the path. You should have an MR3522 in your folder. If you double click that, you see several labs. I'm going to use lab number 4 as a demonstration for how things work. Inside the lab folder, you'll see some sort of file name with a .ipynb or IPython notebook extension. Double click that, and this will open up the Jupyter notebook in which you'll actually run the code to create the figures so that you can answer the questions in the lab. Now, in this console here, there are a few little buttons at the top which you may find useful. If you make any changes to the code, you can save it. If you want to add a cell, for example, you can press the plus button and a new cell pops up. Each of these little boxes, which contains code or a description of what the code is doing, is a different cell. And in the lab instructions, when I refer to, say, the third cell, I'm referring to the cells that have code in them. So this right here would be the third cell, for example. This right here executes the code in a cell, so if I press it, the code has run. It's very fast. And you might note, if you look very closely, that while the code is running, a star appears in the brackets and then is replaced by a number after the code finishes running. You can also press this button that looks like the fast forward button to restart the Python kernel and then run all of the code with one press of the button. Most of the labs contain figures down at the bottom, and there are various different fields that you can plot, various different options depending on the lab that you can change. Sliders for some of the labs where you can slide across different numbers, drop-down menus as the one described or shown here. So I can choose a variable that I want to plot, and this changes the output a little bit. These buttons over here will be quite useful for analyzing the figures as well. This one right here is a zoom, so I can click it, I can zoom in even further if I want to. This back arrow takes me back one step, so this goes back to the previous zoom, and then I can move forward as well by pressing the forward arrow. I can press the home button to go back to the original zoom. If I go back one, I can also use this pan button to move around the figure. Now I'll go back home. If I want to download a figure, I can press this button and it'll download locally to my machine. I can also adjust the size of the figure by dragging from this little gray triangle in the bottom right. Also, as I scroll over the figure, you'll see these numbers and text pop up at the bottom. They just indicate the XY coordinates of where the cursor is, and then also the value of the thing plotted, which in this case is brightness temperature. Not all the labs have this capability. The first 2 labs, which use mapping software to plot variables on top of a map of various different countries or coastlines, does not have this capability. So you'll have to use the color bar to estimate what the values are for those labs. Finally, some of the code, this one is not one of those examples, but some of the code will automatically save files, figures for you, and when they do so, they'll appear over here in the file viewer at left. If you want to download those to your hard drive, you can right-click the name of the file and hit download, and it'll save probably to your downloads folder or wherever the default download is for that particular browser. Feel free to play around with the code and make additions as you see fit. Just make sure you back up before you do so, and you can always save your code again by pressing this button in the top left. And if you get in a bind, contact me and I can help figure out what's going on or refresh you with a new untouched piece of code if necessary. That's all. Enjoy the labs, and hopefully you'll get something useful out of doing this.